decomposition. It's more steps, but it's following steps. It's following rules. Yeah, so go back to your notes packet. So with decomposition, I've written out for you the clear steps you're going to use each time. Using decomposition, you're actually using factoring by grouping with it as well. So for this example, step 1 says multiply A and C. So multiply your leading coefficient and your constant. So what is 3 times 8? Cool. That is step 1. So you're always multiplying the 2 outside numbers. Step 2, find 2 factors of the product that add to B. So just like we were kind of doing before, it's going to be slightly different. So we need to find 2 numbers that multiply to 24, but add to 14. Who knows that? Carissa. Good. So what's the kind of wonky step here that you do is actually this step 3. So that first portion is super easy. Now we have to rewrite the x term as these 2 terms. So what that means is I'm just going to rewrite 3x squared. The 14x, I'm going to change to be plus 12x plus 2x. The 8 I rewrite. So notice 12 plus 2 equals 14. So I've changed what it looks like, but I'm not changing any values here. Step 4 is now factor by grouping. So this method, I agree, it's a lot easier. It's a lot less thinking, but it's not as helpful for grade 11 and 12. This takes way more time. Grades 11 and 12, factoring is the small part of the math. So when this part takes you way longer, the grade 11 and 12 math gets a little bit trickier. So from here, my first 2 terms, what's common is an x. So I would factor out an x. So then I'm left with 3x plus 4. My second 2 terms, I'm going to factor out a 2 because that's the greatest common factor. Yeah, I wrote the 3 wrong. This is x plus 4. Pardon me?
It's just made me
I factored out on my first 2, I factored out 3x.
Just made me forget how to do the other way. Now I can't do either.
Okay, hold on. Okay, sorry, grade 10s, let me go back. I wrote it down wrong. So this first one, we're factoring out 3x. Gavin, listening. We're factoring out 3x from my first one. 3x times x gives us our 3x squared, which is where we were at. 3x times 4 gives us our 12x. In my second 2, I factor out the greatest common factor, which is 2. Both of these leave me with an x plus 4. So from here, I can factor out x plus 4. The other 2 pieces that were left are 3x plus 2. So this second part here is just factor by grouping. So remember, when you're doing this, that moves to there. And then you're done. That's it. So there's a lot less number sense, logical trial and error, all those other pieces with using decomp. Okay, let's try another one. Do you guys have that down? Can I scroll? Yeah. It's a little bit of repetition. So our first step, follow along on this next one. First step, you multiply A and C. So I'm going to go 5, keep your negative. So it's 5 times negative 4 gives us negative 20. So that's our step 1. Go ahead, Andy. Yeah, just another question. It is, it's just a different method to approach the questions with. No, not at all. You can use the method before. Step 2 is to find 2 numbers that will multiply to negative 20 and add, in this case, to negative 19. So that 19 is from here. So in this case, we're going to have negative 20, positive 1. Negative 20, and a positive 1. Tail? Can you wait till Matt's back, please? So now step 3 is to rewrite this with those as your x values. So I rewrite my 5x squared. Then I get minus 20x plus 1x, the minus 4 I just rewrite. From here, do you guys need a second? Sorry. From here, it's just factoring by grouping. So what's common between my first two? 5x. So that's our GCF. That's what we factor out. And then I'm left with x minus 4. My second two, there's nothing common. When there's nothing common, we still say that a 1 is common. And then I have x minus 4. The reason you do that is because you need the 1 to be like a placeholder. And so when we actually factor it now that we'll get two of our proper factors. So you can see x minus 4 is common on both of these. So that's going to be our first binomial. And then our second is the 5x and the plus 1. So that's why you needed a number there to put with it. So you actually get that extra multiplication step happening. So if you don't like this method, I'm super supportive of that. I much prefer the first method.
It looks more complicated. I feel like it's more complicated. Because the other one's just trial and error. This one actually.
I totally agree. So grade 10s, let me word it like this. You need, I strongly suggest for your benefit, to know how to use the first method. If you prefer this, just fine. You can use this, but you should understand how that first method works to use that trial and error. If you don't like this, you never have to do it. I will never force you to do decom. But I want you to know it's an option that's available to you. But in that case, you should know both. I do truly believe that the first method, so trial and error or number sense, as I like to call it, is much preferable. But I get it if that's really hard, and that's fine. But you need to know how to use both methods if you prefer decomp. At a minimum, method 1. And you know, it might. If you have really strong number sense, this will take you longer, yes. If you don't have super strong number sense, this might end up being faster, right? So it goes both ways, and so that's why we decided to teach you both ways this year. Let's do this last one. I know there's more, but then we'll save one for next week. So let's do one more, and we can be done. Again, if you want to, you can use your number sense. So this one, we multiply our first two numbers together. So we're going to go 12 times negative 4. Really important that you keep your signs here. So I get 12 times negative 4 gives us negative 48. I need two numbers that will multiply to equal that, and that will add to equal 13. So does this still require some number sense? Yes. Note it's a positive 13. So in this one, 48, we're going to use positive 16 and negative 3. 16 times 3 gives us 48. Positive 16 minus 3 gives us our 13. What's really important to grade 10s, if you're using this method, when you put it into your factor by grouping, put it in an order that leads you to having the greatest common factors so you don't have to rearrange it. I know 12 and 16 both have 4s that go into them. But then I'd be left with 3 and 4. There's nothing common there. If I flip them, it works a little bit better because then I can have my 12p squared minus 3p. 3 goes into both of those. And then I have plus 16p minus 4. 4 goes into both of those. So if you write it down the first way, you might have to rearrange it to make it work, or you could think of it right off the bat, what's going to match up. So from here, these first two, my greatest common factor is what? 4 doesn't go into 3. 3p. So I'm left with 4p minus 1. My second one, I'm going to take out 4. So I'm left with 4p minus 1. 4p minus 1 is common in both. And then I have 3p plus 4. So a lot of steps, to me, these steps are not logical sequential steps. Like, to me, they don't prompt you to do the next one. And that's also why I don't love this method. So you do have to kind of memorize these steps. That being said, they will always work. It's always a process to follow. And sometimes it's really nice just to be able to be like step 1, step 2, step 3. This is what I do. It's a little bit less thinking in some ways. Okay, we'll stop there for today. I'll let you guys just be done. Next week, we will finish these. So we'll finish the rest of this little workbook for you next week. With that being said, if on that quiz that we wrote 2 days ago, you were struggling, and if today was a large struggle, should you probably do something over the weekend? Yes. You should have went to math help as well. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, I'm still talking. If you were struggling, I would strongly suggest you finish those riddle booklets I gave you. Let's say you finished those and they were still a struggle. Remember, your workbook is full of questions. I assign you the bare minimum. All of the questions are really good though. So you always can do bonus questions in your workbook to help you. This is our hardest unit. This is the hardest part of our hardest unit. So make sure you're doing the work to match that. This is a harder unit. You're going to probably have to put in some extra work. You guys have a long weekend. You have time on Monday. I strongly suggest you're using that time on Monday to maybe doing some extra practice questions.